Welcome to Module 2. Lesson study is often misunderstood by teachers and administrators alike. Its primary goal is not to compile a library of great lesson plans, though that surely is a happy byproduct of the lesson study process. Instead, the primary goal of lesson study is to give teachers the opportunity to think deeply about how students learn and how their methodology in the classroom affects student learning. Our teachers have already defined an overarching goal or research theme for their lesson study. They want their students to become inquisitive, creative, resourceful problem solvers. Now they need to start refining their lesson study by identifying a topic on which to focus. The team has identified geometry as a general weakness of their students and has agreed to focus their efforts on this area of the curriculum. They revisit the broad subject matter goals taken from the Michigan Curriculum Framework. They look at the learning plan for the geometry unit, especially the unit outcomes. They discuss possible lessons upon which they might focus.
We found out that our curriculum was almost book-driven, and geometry is always at the end of the textbook, so you never had the time to address that. So teachers were always never had the time to address geometry, and it showed up on our NEEP scores. So we sort of readdressed that, realigned our curriculum.
Do you see the textbook-driven curriculum as an issue that's still a problem, or is that something?
Well, it's still a problem because teachers are kind of creatures of habit. You know, the text there's really a lot of security in the textbook to just follow the sequence that's already been provided for somebody. So we found out that we had to break away from that, or we would never, get our scores. And we noticed it was always geometry we were low at, and this year we corrected that, and our scores just went up drastically.
What we had identified as our global goal was the problem solving, based on the idea if you take the problem solving steps, understand the problem. And since we did lesson study, I've moved from 8th grade to 6th grade, so I'm right in the heart of fractions. And now I'm really seeing where it's coming from, and that the problem solving issue is still big. And I guess being aware of that, I was able to pull what we learned from lesson study into my 6th grade curriculum, giving them more story problems, situations that requires them to read through and to have them see that, a typical problem that they struggled with in my 6th grade class now. So it'll be interesting to see how it shows up later on the grade level expectation exams.
And as the team finds out, they each use different curriculum, different textbooks, and a different calendar of activities to teach geometry. They discover that in order to agree upon a specific lesson, they must identify the teacher who will teach the research lesson. Herein lies a real-life lesson in implementing lesson study. It is not necessarily a linear process. The unique nature of each group will help define both the process and the design of the lesson study. This, for instance, is a multi-district group. While they have a common performance weakness in geometry, they discover that the problem exists for different reasons in their district. They realize that they can't resolve every district's issue with geometry. This realization, in and of itself, helps them to more sharply focus the research lesson. By choosing one teacher in one classroom in one district, the team can begin to understand the specific strengths and weaknesses of a curriculum and a lesson as it's currently taught. Not to mention the specific strengths and weaknesses of this classroom's students.
We talked about tools to help us rotate, and I'm not sure I see anybody using them.
In this case, the research lesson teacher uses everyday mathematics, a mathematics curriculum that interweaves multiple content strands over time, giving students multiple exposures and frequent opportunities to review and practice skills related to a specific topic. The team identifies the geometry concepts to which the students have already been exposed: measuring and drawing angles, reasoning with angle measures, using a protractor to make circle graphs, and some coordinate geometry. The team also looks at the lessons yet to learn, according to the district's curriculum. After considerable discussion, the team decides to focus their research lesson on rotations, an area previously identified as a weakness for several of the districts represented by the teachers on this team. Rotations are taught differently by several of the teachers present. The group examines both similarities and differences. They look at the lesson's goals. They identify the manipulatives or teaching aids that are used. In fact, a lively exchange takes place, focused on the merits and shortcomings of these methodologies.
The other one was analyzing shapes and patterns. That's common with both districts.
So the question that I thought of is, what in these subject areas is the potential cause of the weakness? Is it because it's not taught until later, or is there some other reason? And that might lead us into a global goal choice.
It's that idea of trying to make the connections between things so that maybe something with patterns and shapes then can lead into ratios and proportions. So they're pulling on some previous ideas. And I'm wondering if that isn't something that would be helpful, looking at these areas of weakness, to maybe take a look at.
Well, that's part of the reason why our district made the change and went to everyday math, because it does spiral and the students will revisit the subjects very often throughout the curriculum. It's not, you teach it in 3rd grade and never see it again to the 8th grade meet. It spirals much more fluidly up until need time.
Team members alternately engage in thoughtful examination of their own teaching methods and those of others. They look at lesson plans developed outside this immediate circle. Some groups may even examine how a concept is taught in other countries. It is this focus on methodology as opposed to content that sparks what some believe to be the magic of the lesson study process. There's another key focus as well, that of the goals that they have established for this lesson study. There's the broad long-term goals, the broad subject matter goals, unit-specific goals, and finally, lesson-specific goals. There's a method inherent in establishing this hierarchy. Establishing goals affords the team a structure against which to test their hypothesis. Clear goals allow the team to plan a lesson that is more focused, logical, and coherent, not to mention the opportunity to establish measurable goals. Lastly, these goals serve to focus the team on student learning as well as the content and methodology. That concludes our second module. Next, we'll take a look at planning the research lesson.